How to survive in Korea. Weddings. Step 0. Attire. As a guest, dress formal to business casual. Avoid wearing all white, shorts or going topless. Step 1. Arrival time. Arrive 30 minutes prior to the wedding ceremony. Too many cars, too many halls, too many people. There are many twists and turns. Take pictures and shake hands. And write your name vertically, not horizontally, in the guest book. Step 2. Or, shibor. 50,000 won, 100,000 won, 150,000 won. Cash gifts are given in these units. Decide on the amount based on your relationship. Write your name vertically on the envelope. Step 3. Wedding etiquette. Fill up the front row. Guests have 3 duties to fulfill: clapping, cheering, and taking pictures. Step 4. Dining. Take off your jacket. This will be your seat from now on. Start with the not your everyday delicacies. Kalbijjim. Yes. Bosa. Yes. Chili shrimps. Definitely yes. Kimbap. Yeah. Only if you can't live without it. No need to pile up food. You have more than one opportunity. Did you survive the wedding? Wait. Did someone catch your eye? What are you waiting for? You're looking fine today.
The conflict involving the United States, Israel and Iran has entered its 7th day, with missile exchanges continuing across the region as tensions escalate and the US Congress rejects efforts to curb President Trump's war powers. Countries worldwide are scrambling to secure oil after Middle East tensions pushed prices up as much as 16%, with South Korea announcing plans to import 6 million barrels of crude from the UAE to stabilize supply. President Lee Jae-myung has vowed to root out 7 major social malpractices, from drug crimes to stock market manipulation, to strengthen stability amid global uncertainty. Operation Epic Fury enters its 7th day as the joint US and Israeli military campaign against Iran intensifies. Overnight, US forces struck an Iranian drone carrier in the Persian Gulf, while regional tensions escalated with new airstrikes in Lebanon and intercepted drone attacks targeting US installations. Our Kim Do-yeon has the latest.
It's now 7 days since Operation Epic Fury began, and missile exchanges between the militaries of the US and Israel and the military of Iran continued overnight. In the Persian Gulf, the US Central Command confirmed a direct strike on an Iranian drone carrier ship. The vessel, described as comparable in size to a World War II aircraft carrier, is currently on fire. In a separate maritime incident, Sri Lankan authorities took control of an Iranian vessel off its coast. Regional security remains highly volatile. Air defenses in Qatar successfully intercepted a drone attack directed at Al Udeid Air Base, the largest U.S. military installation in the region. In the United Arab Emirates, emergency alerts were broadcast to mobile phones across Dubai, warning residents of a potential incoming missile threat and directing them to take immediate shelter. The conflict also continues to intensify in Lebanon. The Israel Defense Force conducted 26 airstrikes on the Da'iya neighborhood in southern Beirut. This bombardment immediately followed forced evacuation orders that affected approximately 500,000 residents in the area. Simultaneously, the aerial campaign over Iran persists. A military academy in Tehran was confirmed as one of the latest targets hit by U.S. and Israeli forces. Also on Thursday, Trump told a news outlet that he has to be involved in choosing Iran's next supreme leader after Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed in a joint U.S.-Israeli strike. He dismissed the possibility of Khamenei's son taking power, calling him a lightweight and unacceptable. This, as Iran's Leadership Council has convened to discuss the selection of a new supreme leader, its 4th meeting according to reports. The final decision could be delayed, with the U.S. and Israel potentially targeting who's selected. Amid the escalating rhetoric, a political battle continues in Washington. On Capitol Hill, the U.S. House of Representatives rejected an effort to curb Trump's authority to wage war against Iran, voting 219 to 212 largely along party lines. The measure invoked the War Powers Resolution, which would have required congressional approval before continuing military operations. The vote came one day after the Senate blocked a similar effort. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
As conflict in the Middle East continues, efforts to bring home stranded South Koreans are speeding up. Following tonight's arrival of a plane from Dubai, the government is coordinating with the UAE to deploy additional charter flights for a swift evacuation. Cha In-kyung reports.
Presidential Chief of Staff Kang Hun-sik said on Friday that a passenger flight carrying South Korean nationals had left Dubai and was scheduled to arrive at Incheon International Airport this evening. His remarks came during a briefing at Cheongwade on government support for the evacuation of Koreans from the United Arab Emirates. He said commercial flights from Abu Dhabi are expected to resume on Saturday, while a chartered Korean Air flight will also be dispatched, noting that he held talks with Khaldun Khalifa Al Mubarak, chairman of Abu Dhabi's Executive Affairs Authority. Kang said 18,000 South Koreans are currently in 14 Middle East nations, with around 4,900 of them being short-term travelers. Of these, 3,500 are currently staying in the UAE and Qatar, waiting to return home. The government has been stepping up efforts to support citizens in the region. The foreign ministry said it will dispatch joint rapid response teams to Dubai and Muscat to assist Korean nationals. Officials say the UAE currently hosts the largest number of short-term Korean residents in the Middle East, with about 3,000 staying there. Foreign Minister Cho Hyun also held a phone call with UAE Foreign Minister Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, requesting the Emirati government's support for the swift and safe return of Korean nationals, including the possible arrangement of charter flights. Korean tourists stranded in the Middle East are gradually returning home amid the continuing conflict there. More than 400 tourists had been staying in Dubai as of Wednesday, including about 150 traveling with Hana Tour, around 190 with Mud Tour, and roughly 70 with Yellow Balloon Tour. Some of them have already begun returning. 36 Hana Tour tourists arrived at Incheon Airport on Thursday afternoon after taking a commercial flight via Taipei.
I thought I'd be there for at least a week. Fortunately, I was able to arrive early, which is great.
Chief of Staff Kang also added that he will continue consultations with the UAE to bring all Korean citizens back home as soon as possible. Cha Young-kyung, Arirang News.
South Korea will import more than 6 million barrels of crude oil from the United Arab Emirates as a contingency measure following the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, through which about 70% of its crude oil imports pass. Presidential Chief of Staff Kang Hun-sik said on Friday that 2 Korean oil tankers will be loaded with a combined 4 million barrels supplied by the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company. The shipment will be loaded at a UAE port that does not require passage through the Strait of Hormuz. Kang added that the UAE has also pledged to provide another 2 million barrels from joint strategic reserves stored in South Korea. 6 million barrels amount to more than twice the country's daily crude oil consumption. Although South Korea holds petroleum stockpiles equivalent to almost 7 months of supply, Kang said the move is a precaution in case tensions in the Middle East persist. Following South Korea's move to secure additional crude oil supplies, global attention is now turning to the broader energy shock triggered by tensions in the Middle East. Ian Jin reports on how the closure of the Strait of Hormuz is driving up oil prices and rattling energy markets worldwide.
The closure of the Hormuz Strait has caused oil and gas prices to skyrocket and driven global energy trade into turmoil. Global oil prices have surged by roughly 16% in roughly a week's time, but U.S. President Donald Trump is unconcerned, as he stated during an interview with Reuters on Thursday that the current rise in gasoline prices globally and its consequent impact on the U.S. market is not as critical an issue compared to the necessity of military action against the Iranian regime. This is a notable shift from Trump regularly touting that gasoline prices have dropped under his watch. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed on Thursday that White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles and Energy Secretary Chris Wright held an urgent meeting with the heads of major U.S. oil companies to discuss possibly increasing domestic production and utilizing strategic reserves to mitigate the current situation. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum said that all emergency measures were being considered to stabilize oil prices. However, risks are higher for China, the world's largest crude oil importer and the biggest buyer of Iranian oil. The country gets about 45% of its oil from the Hormuz Strait. Reuters reported on Friday that according to diplomatic sources, China is in talks with Iran to allow crude oil and Qatari liquefied natural gas vessels safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. Even more exposed to energy flow disruptions are Japan and South Korea. Japan's government said it imported 2.34 million barrels of crude per day in January, about 95% of its total imports that month. South Korea reportedly imports around 70% of its crude oil and 20% of its LNG from the Middle East. With fuel prices soaring, President Lee Jae-myung issued a fresh warning on Friday against oil refiners, saying that price collusion is a serious crime against the public that would be severely punished.
무엇보다 기름값 바가지처럼 공동체의 어려움을 이용해서 부당한 폭리를 취하려는 반사회적인 악행에 대해서는 아주 엄정하고 단호한 대응을 해야 합니다.
President Lee added that any companies that do this would face the simple truth of reaping what they sow. As part of efforts to stabilize the local energy market, government authorities are set to conduct at least 2,000 monthly inspections on prices and quality of fuel products across gas stations nationwide starting Friday. 이은진, Arirang News.
Consumer prices here in the country held steady last month, but their prospects are now looking uncertain on the back of soaring oil prices amid tensions in the Middle East. Kim Junong reports.
South Korea's consumer inflation held steady at 2.0% in February, according to data released by the Ministry of Data and Statistics on Friday. That marks the 6th straight month in the 2% range, in line with the Bank of Korea's target. Service prices rose 2.6%, driven by personal services, while core inflation indicators remained in the mid-2% range. Yet the key factor behind the stable headline figure was petroleum prices, which fell 2.4% from a year earlier, turning negative for the first time in 6 months. But that support may be reversing as conflict in the Middle East pushes global oil prices higher, with the impact already being felt in South Korea. As of Friday, the average price of gasoline in Seoul exceeded $1.28 per liter. That's a jump of about 8.7% in just days. With fuel prices soaring day by day, drivers lined up at a gas station in Seoul known for its relatively lower prices nearby.
I always check gas prices on my commute, and I was surprised to see them jump suddenly. So I took a different route today to stop at a cheaper gas station.
This doesn't make sense. I drive a big bus, and it takes about 200 liters to fill up, so I'm paying more than $34 extra every time. It's getting hard to keep working.
For now, the impact is most visible in gasoline prices, but experts say the effects rarely stop there and often spread to broader consumer prices with the time lag.
Typically, a 10% increase in oil prices could lift inflation by about half a percentage point. With the Korean won also weakening, higher import costs could push up raw material prices and eventually spill over into everyday goods such as flour and sugar.
With the latest inflation data yet to reflect the recent surge, attention is turning to next month's figures as the government steps up efforts to closely monitor inflation. Kim Junong, Arirang News.
The president has called for a stern crackdown in fraudulent activities in society at this time of global uncertainty. Our top office correspondent Yoon Jung-min has the details.
As the president vowed to protect the lives of the people from increasing instability in the global economy and security, he has turned his focus to doing away with malpractices that harm society.
외부에서 몰려오는 위기의 파고를 넘어서려면 우리 사회 내부에 존재하는 비정상적인 요소들을 정상화하는 노력이 뒷받침돼야 합니다.
In Friday's meeting with his aides, President Lee Jae-myung was referring to 7 specific malpractices, meaning drug crimes, corruption in the public sector, voice phishing, unjust real estate practices, deliberate tax delinquency, stock price manipulation, and serious disasters.
부당한 이득을 취하려다 걸리면 회생이 불가능할 정도로 오히려 경제적 손실을 본다. 또 폐가 망신할 수 있다라는 인식이 자리 잡을 수 있게 해야 합니다.
Lee called on his officials to check whether current rules and system function well, and if necessary, revamp the system.
사회 전반의 제도를 공정하고 투명하며 합리적으로 개선해서 규칙을 어기면 이익을 얻고 규칙을 지키면 오히려 손해를 보는 이 비정상의 시대를 반드시 끝내야 합니다.
His remarks fall in line with a series of his recent policy drives, including curbing real estate speculation, tightening punishment on stock price manipulation, as well as tackling transnational and drug crimes.
Among the 7 tasks, President Lee ordered officials to improve the technology through R&D investment to ferret out drugs, saying drug smuggling has become more sophisticated.
He also ordered faster measures to help the people suffering from voice phishing, such as administrative orders, as he checked off other tasks too. What's key from here is how to handle the reform tasks in a fast and accurate way, as the president has set the direction and emphasized the need to speed up the process. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
BLACKPINK has set a new record for first week album sales by a K-pop girl group with its third mini-album Deadline. According to YG Entertainment, the album sold more than 1.77 million copies in the week following its release last Friday. The figure marks the highest first week sales ever recorded by a K-pop girl group, surpassing the group's previous release Born Pink by roughly 230,000 copies. The new album topped the iTunes album charts in 38 regions worldwide, while the music video for the lead track Go ranked #1 on YouTube's global trending list. The 2026 Winter Paralympics kicks off on this Friday, and Team Korea is partaking in virtually every sporting discipline. Our correspondent Park Gon-woo has a preview.
A new chapter begins in Italy as the Milano Cortina Paralympics start on Friday. 20 Korean athletes across 5 of the 6 sporting disciplines are set to compete. Team Korea is aiming to win at least 1 gold and 1 bronze medal, while finishing within the top 20. Among them, the mixed doubles wheelchair curling team of Baek Hye-jin and Lee Yong-suk, the world's top-ranked pair, is raising expectations for a medal after winning multiple preliminary matches already.
I'm very honored to be competing in the Games for the 2nd time. Our goal's to win, so we hope you'll watch our journey. Your support will mean a lot to us.
The team will face all 8 opponents in a round-robin format in a bid to advance to the semifinals. Also, Kim Yoon-ji, the winner of the 2026 Para-Cross-Country World Cup, is aiming to become the first Korean female athlete to win gold in a Winter Paralympic sport in her debut at the Games.
My goal's always to perform better than the athletes who are stronger than me. Winning a medal is one of my goals, but as this is my first Paralympics, I want to show my very best.
Other athletes to watch include Shin Hee-yeon, a para-cross-country skiing veteran who brought 2 of Korea's 3 medals 8 years ago in Pyeongchang.
The last time Korea won a medal was at Pyeongchang. If we win one this time, it could mark a turning point for Korea's winter parasports. Athletes have been shedding blood, sweat, and tears, so it's meaningful in itself, regardless of strong results.
With this edition of the Paralympics marking its 50th anniversary, the Games are drawing even greater attention, featuring the largest number of participants ever, with 5 countries including Portugal taking part for the first time. More than 600 athletes from 56 countries will compete in the Games over 10 days, running until March 15. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, as we await the start of the Paralympics in Italy, our An Sung-jin was out and about here in the country to explore firsthand South Korea's efforts to foster an environment of equity in sports. Do take a look.
It looks just like any other motion-based video game. But if you take a closer look, the player racing through the lanes is in a wheelchair. For wheelchair users, the simple act of breaking a sweat through sports can be difficult. But this platform allows users to participate in virtual competitions, such as racing, cross-country skiing, and road biking. Players move their wheelchairs to control the game, turning digital play into real aerobic exercise.
I became disabled in 2011, but before that, I used to enjoy playing basketball. Not a lot of people know much about these platforms for the disabled, so I want these to become more well-known.
This wheelchair workout doesn't just focus on rehab, it helps with weight loss and cardio, and it builds upper body strength as well. For disabled people, including wheelchair users, exercise can have limited options with few accessible opportunities, especially indoors.
What started as a solution for people like my mother is now being developed based on their needs. Our platform leads to professional players, which also increases employment for the disabled, so I hope to reach out to more people.
In South Korea, more inclusive sports facilities are emerging. The Pandabi Sports Center is designed as a shared sports complex where people with and without disabilities can exercise together.
There aren't many places for people like us to go, but here we can get together. I hope people with disabilities come out and join activities like this.
The center provides adaptive equipment and hosts sports games, including goalball, a game designed for visually impaired athletes who track a ball-filled ball by sound.
Though this sport is designed for the visually impaired, everyone plays under the same conditions with their eyes covered, which makes it unique. And we get to play it together as a team.
That's why a lawmaker is emphasizing that these sports movements need strong institutional backing for more accessibility.
It is important to strengthen support systems, including building accessible sports facilities, providing shared transportation, and ensuring that assistants are available when needed.
With increasing innovations, these opportunities are opening doors that were long closed to some of those with disabilities. For everyone to stay active. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
A network dedicated to promoting Korea's traditional music is celebrating its silver anniversary this year with a pledge to ensure better access to these traditional sounds for those with disabilities. Jung Hae-rim has more.
From the clear voices of young traditional prodigies to the dynamic sounds of experimental rock, the National Gugak Center was filled with diverse rhythms on Thursday evening. The Gugak Broadcasting system hosted the Change Up concert to commemorate its 25 years on the air. Generations of artists were brought together on stage, including master singer Lee Chun-hee, demonstrating how traditional music is evolving with the times. For the network, the past 2.5 decades have been about making Gugak, traditional Korean music, more accessible to the public.
Before the network, people had to visit concert halls to enjoy traditional music. But now, we've created a platform where the public can experience diverse Gugak anytime and anywhere.
The anniversary concert reflected that vision, bringing together artists across generations and genres. The concert opened with 25 young Gayagum Pyeongchang performers. The lineup also featured tightrope performer Nam Chang-dong, experimental band Jambinai, and emerging group Orumse.
Traditional culture should be enjoyed by everyone in our daily lives. We want to eliminate barriers, including those for people with disabilities, to create a space where we can all share this culture.
To achieve this, the network is introducing a barrier-free programming system, providing closed captions and sign language for its TV broadcast. Furthermore, the network is taking a leap globally. From March 14th, it will begin airing select radio and TV programs on the east and west coasts of the United States, sharing the heritage of K-music with the world. 정혜림, Arirang News.
Spring feels far away with icy rain and chilly winds. Although the main band of heavy rain has moved away, scattered rain and snow will continue until tonight across the central regions and Jeollabuk-do province. Meanwhile, mountainous regions of Gangwon-do province might receive 1 to 3 centimeters of more snowfall. And yesterday's wet weather brought strong cold air to the country, and we'll need that winter coat through the weekend, which feels like temperatures dipping down to -9 degrees Celsius here in the capital on Saturday morning. In fact, many inland regions will wake up to sub-zero temperatures at -2 degrees Celsius in Gwangju, but -5 degrees over in Chuncheon. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 7 degrees, Busan topping out at 10 degrees Celsius under sunnier skies with better air quality. After a winter-like weekend, we'll have early spring weather back next week. With that in mind, here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have for tonight. I'm Moon Hae-ryun, filling in for Kim Da-mi. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.
Time to set the facts straight. Get Korea right. K-culture is sweeping the globe. K-pop, K-drama, K-movie, K-food, and even K-beauty. Korean cultural content is gaining more and more fans worldwide. It's indeed the golden age of K-culture. But with this growing interest comes an increase in misinformation about Korea. There's so much inaccurate information out there. Even AI can sometimes get it wrong. So, we must set things straight and correct all the misinformation. So here's the plan. The Voluntary Agency Network of Korea, BLACKPINK, and Arirang TV present the Get Korea Right project. Our goal is to provide accurate information on important keywords that come to mind when we think of Korea. Blatant errors and false claims that distort history. It's time to set the record straight, sharing the true history and culture of Korea while raising the national brand. Let's get started with Get Korea Right. Are you ready to join?
Knock knock! The magical door to the world of K-animation is swinging wide open. Meet your instant new BFF, the adorable Catch. Tina Ping will have you hooked from the very first glance. Need a hand? Our Robocar Pony Rescue team is always zooming in to save the day. How about tagging along on Pinkfong and Pal's super exciting quest to reclaim their lost magic? With the mysterious life forms Kebion by your side, you can become a Kebion master and save humanity like the total hero. Protecting children's innocence while igniting their boundless imaginations. That's the magic of Korean animation. K-animation, the ultimate bestie for kids worldwide.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gyan. Tensions are rising across multiple regions after the United States carried out a preemptive strike on Iran, a move that is now sending ripple effects far beyond the Middle East. In Northeast Asia, attention is turning to how North Korea, China, and Russia may respond. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has already stepped up public military activities, including inspecting a naval destroyer and observing missile launches, signaling Pyongyang is closely watching the current situation. The development also comes at a sensitive diplomatic moment. China and Russia have sharply criticized the U.S. strike, raising questions about whether closer coordination among Beijing, Moscow, and Pyongyang could emerge. For a closer look into the current situation, we connect to Park Wan-gun, professor of North Korea Studies at Ewha Women's University. Good to see you, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
And also joining us is Evans Revere, former acting U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs and a non-resident senior fellow in the Foreign Policy Program at Brookings. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Great to be with you again.
So first, let's start off with Professor Park, with North Korea's immediate reaction, of course. Since the U.S. strike on Iran, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has been making a series of public appearances, like inspecting a destroyer and observing missile launches, which is quite contrary to past periods of U.S. Military action. Do you think this is behind his decision what do you think is behind his decision?
I think Kim Jong-un's continued public appearance you just mentioned during the Iran war clearly carried some kind of a political message. First, he is trying to signal that North Korea is different from Iran. As you mentioned, it is true that North Korean leaders have traditionally disappeared from public view during period of U.S. military action, especially Kim Jong-il often stayed completely out of the sight in such a situation. However, Kim Jong-un has shown a somewhat different pattern in recent years. Since the 2020s, he has even attended missile launch event during period of large-scale South Korea-U.S. joint military exercises. So by continuing his public activities during the Iran war, Kim Jong-un is likely trying to demonstrate confidence. The message seems to be that North Korea is fundamentally different from Iran and that the United States would not dare to attack North Korea militarily. In other words, it is a form of a strategic signaling meant to project strength and stability. At the same time, however, North Korean behavior also suggests a certain level of the concern and caution. Shortly after the U.S. strike on Iran on February 28th, the North Korean Foreign Ministry issued a statement criticizing the U.S., but the tone of that statement was actually quite restrained, and it did not include any direct personal attacks against President Trump. Since then, North Korea has largely remained silent about the Iran war and has not mentioned the conflict domestically. This suggests that Pyongyang is trying to avoid provoking Washington. So in short, while Kim Jong-un public appearance project confidence, they also reflect an underlying awareness of the overwhelming power of the United States.
So it really seems to be a deliberate signal from North Korea. What about Mr. Revere? Given the current situation, how should we interpret the North's decision to publicly reveal the test launch of strategic cruise missiles from the 5,000-ton Cheonho destroyer? What strategic meaning does this carry?
Well, first of all, let me just say I completely agree with Professor Park's analysis of the unfolding situation that we have before us here. I think regarding the missile test and the appearance on the naval vessel, it's very important, I think, to look at it in the context of the recent North Korean Workers' Party meeting that took place in Pyongyang. There were some really important themes that came out on every single day of that conference, and it was a very intentional bit of messaging by Kim Jong-un and his party and his government. And there were several important themes, and one of those important themes has already been mentioned by Professor Park, and that was this notion of North Korean confidence or self-assuredness in this new environment that they find themselves in. I mean, that was something that came through on the very first day of the party conference and continues to be an element of North Korean propaganda. Beyond that, the party conference underscored the strength of North Korea militarily and politically. That was another important theme. And then, of course, there was a very strong commitment during the party conference to continue the development and production of nuclear weapons and the development and production of conventional weaponry. And so those are the themes that came out of the party conference, and I think those are exactly the themes that North Korea is trying to project by this military display that they put on, by Kim Jong-un's appearance there, sort of a swaggering appearance as he interacted with naval officers and crew members, etc. And it also underscores the important point that Professor Pak just made, which is that North Korea is not Iran. Iran has long had nuclear weapons ambitions, but the key difference here, and the key message, I think, from the North Koreans is that while Iran may have nuclear ambitions, North Korea is an actual nuclear power and has both the capability and the expressed intention to use those weapons. And that goes back to this point of confidence and strength and military capability that I mentioned earlier. So I think those are the key things that we can take away from this exercise, from the missile firing, and from Kim Jong-un's appearance.
Right, so largely we can see North Korea showing kind of a confidence regarding the latest events. But when we turn to the broader message coming out from Washington, Professor Park, what kind of a strategic message do you think President Trump's strike on Iran actually sends to North Korea? Do you believe the Middle East situation could further reinforce Pyongyang's nuclear policy?
I think North Korea is likely receiving 2 or 3 very important messages from the current Middle East situation and the U.S. strike on Iran. First, as you suggested, this will probably reinforce Pyongyang's belief that nuclear weapons are essential for regime survival. North Korea has long used the example of Iraq and Libya to justify its nuclear program. When Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi were overthrown, Pyongyang repeatedly argued that those regimes collapsed because they did not possess nuclear weapons. Kim Jong-un himself made this point very clearly at the recent Ninth Party Congress. He said that in today's sharp and complex international environment, nuclear weapons are necessary to deter coercion and injustice and to defend national security and sovereignty. Now, seeing hostile leaders to the United States, such as Venezuela's Maduro earlier this year, and Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei being targeted or removed, will likely strengthen North Korea's conviction that nuclear weapons are the ultimate guarantee of survival. Pyongyang will probably use this situation to further justify its nuclear arsenal as a legitimate form of self-defense in what it views as a power-driven international order. Second, however, the situation may also create a certain level of anxiety. I already mentioned that we also agree with that. In Pyongyang, Iran had not fully developed the nuclear weapons and was actually in negotiations with the United States when it was attacked. North Korea, on the other hand, has refused negotiation recently and continued to demonstrate its capability to strike the U.S. mainland with the nuclear weapons. In terms of threat perception, North Korea's nuclear capability is far more advanced and more dangerous than Iran's. So Pyongyang must also recognize that it cannot completely escape the possibility of strong military pressure from the United States. Third, there is also psychological pressure related to U.S. operation targeting top leadership. The U.S. has demonstrated that it has extremely sophisticated intelligence and precision strike capability, including so-called high-value target operation aimed at eliminating key leaders. This inevitably sends a signal to Pyongyang that Washington may also be capable of identifying the whereabouts of the North Korean's top leadership, including Kim Jong-un himself. And that kind of message could create significant pressure for the North Korean leader.
Well, definitely. So it could really reinforce North Korea's nuclear survival logic as well. Now, Mr. Revere, there's also growing debate about possible U.S. military options. Some people, though speculating, are discussing whether the U.S. could apply a leadership removal operation similar to what was used against Iran to North Korea as well. What is your assessment of that?
It's really troubling to hear this sort of discussion because of the risks involved in it. We need to go back to the Clinton administration, an earlier phase of this nuclear crisis, and remember that there was a time when the Clinton administration considered military action against North Korea. And in the end, that option was rejected in favor of negotiations, primarily because of the incredible risk involved. And the President and the Secretary of Defense and others realized that by going down that path, we were creating the potential for a major military and security disaster on and around the Korean Peninsula. And all of that was before North Korea became a military nuclear power. So now North Korea has nuclear weapons. North Korea has demonstrated its nuclear capabilities and its missile capabilities. North Korea has not only developed those nuclear capabilities, but they have much more advanced conventional capabilities than they had back then. North Korea has gotten incredibly valuable military, on-the-ground military experience, fighting in support of Russia against Ukraine. They have become rather expert in the use of electronic and drone warfare. So they have all sorts of new capabilities and abilities today that they did not have a number of years ago. And I can't imagine any scenario in which military action against North Korea would not result in a full-scale war with hundreds of thousands of casualties, not only on the Korean Peninsula, but in the region. And so I think that would be a strategic disaster. And so if I were to ask my opinion about this, I would strongly argue against going down that path.
Thank you for that opinion, Mr. Avir. Now, when we turn elsewhere, China and Russia have also criticized the U.S. for attacking Iran. Could this situation lead to closer military and strategic cooperation among North Korea, China, and Russia? And from Washington's perspective, what realistic diplomatic tools actually exist to prevent that from happening, Professor Park?
Well, first of all, one striking thing about the Iran war is that China and Russia are largely absent from the actual conflict. Both countries are considered partners of Iran, and Russia has even conducted joint military exercise with Iran in the past. But after the United States carries out the strike, China and Russia mostly limited themselves to criticizing Washington. So far, there has been no meaningful or direct support for Iran from either country. China in particular faces a complicated strategic calculation. If Iran were to fully back to Strait of Hormuz, it would directly affect China as well, because roughly 20-something% of China's imported energy passes through that route. At the same time, Beijing is preparing for an important U.S.-China summit, so China has to carefully consider how strongly it should speak out about the Iran war without damaging its broader diplomatic interest. Now, returning to your questions, in the short term, we might see North Korea, China, and Russia presenting a united political message, especially in criticizing the U.S. over the Iran situation. In fact, the three countries have already expressed similar criticism of Washington. However, that may be a limit of their cooperation. The alignment among North Korea, China, and Russia has clear structural limit. For example, last year we saw the symbolic moment of solidarity, such as China's Victory Day ceremony on September 3rd and North Korea's 8th anniversary of Workers' Party on October 10th, where leaders from the three countries appeared together. But beyond the symbolism, there is a very little substantive cooperation. Unlike the United States, South Korea, and Japan, the three countries do not have institutionalized trilateral cooperation. They do not hold regular trilateral meetings, they do not have a formal coordination mechanism, and they have never conducted joint military exercise together as trilateral group. In particular, relations between North Korea and China are still not fully restored. Early this year, when North Korea reported the New Year's greeting from foreign leaders, message from Vladimir Putin was prominently featured on the front page of Nodong Shinmun, but Xi Jinping's message was mentioned only briefly along with other leaders. Moreover, China is not willing to completely ignore international sanctions in order to support North Korea, which means the level of economic assistance Pyongyang wants from Beijing remain limited. So overall, while we may see some political coordination and shared rhetoric, the idea of a strong and cohesive North Korea, China, Russia cooperation still faces significant limitations.
Professor Park just touched upon the relationship between China and Iran. And given China's historically friendly ties with Iran, many are watching whether the situation could become a variable in the future U.S.-China summit. Mr. Revere, what is your outlook on this?
Well, I would second what Professor Park said, that there are some serious limits about what the Chinese and the Russians are prepared to do to back up their rhetoric and in support of Iran. That doesn't mean that we might not have quiet and very indirect military assistance being provided both by Beijing and Moscow to Iran. But the point that he made, that there's this lack of military coordination at a practical level, I think is an important one to keep in mind. There's very little that China can do. And the stakes of this for China are great because of China's dependence on the oil that transits the Straits of Hormuz. But I don't think that this is going to be a factor that could undermine or strongly negatively affect the U.S.-China summit later on this month. I think what's happening between the United States and China is going to focus on a number of different issues that are extremely important, directly important to China, including Taiwan. I think there'll be some discussion of the U.S.-China strategic and trade ties. I think there'll be discussion of Japan. There'll be some discussion of North Korea. But I don't think that the Iran situation is going to be something that would torpedo the summit or affect it in any profoundly negative way, although it will continue to be a dark cloud, if you will, hanging over the U.S.-China relationship for a while.
But when we involve North Korea into the picture, so if President Trump were to visit China, the possibility of restarting U.S.-North Korea dialogue has often been seen as a key turning point for the Korean Peninsula. Professor Park, how might the current Middle East situation affect the prospects for renewed North Korea-U.S. talks?
I think this current situation could actually lower the threshold for another U.S.-North Korean summit. As I already mentioned earlier, Kim Jong-un may feel a certain level of the pressure from recent events. President Trump's unpredictability, along with the demonstrated U.S. capability to carry out leadership targeting operation, could be quite unsettling for Kim. In particular, Kim Jong-un may be reminded of the tension of 2017. At the time, President Trump warned that North Korea could be totally destroyed. Even the name of recent Iran operation, Epic Fury, could evoke memories of Trump's earlier warning that North Korea would face fire and fury. This kind of signal could reinforce the sense of risk in Pyongyang. Another important factor is that Iran and North Korea will inevitably be compared. If the United States is willing to strike Iran but continue to maintain a conciliatory approach toward North Korea, that could appear contradictory and may draw criticism inside the U.S. In fact, Iran was attacked even while negotiation with Washington was still ongoing. Pyongyang understands this dynamic very well, so it may be feel that completely rejecting talks could also carry risks. That is why if Trump again proposed a summit like he did ahead of the APEC summit in last October, it may be difficult for Kim Jong-un to reject the idea outright. So we should also remember that Kim Jong-un himself has hinted at a willingness to engage with Trump. In his speech to the Supreme People's Assembly last September, Kim Jong-un said that his personal relationship with Trump was not bad. And at the recent party congress as well, he left open the possibility of improving relations with the United States. Finally, North Korea desperate need a sanction relief. Sanction relief is crucial for economic development, and also it is important for Pyongyang's long-term goal becoming a de facto nuclear weapon state with some level of international acceptance. So while we should be cautious and predictions, if President were to actively propose dialogue again, we cannot completely rule out the possibility that Kim Jong-un might respond positively.
Now, when we zoom out a little bit, anxiety over the security in Northeast Asia appears to be growing day by day following the Iran situation. So in response to this, Mr. Revere, do you believe it's necessary to establish a new deterrence framework, such as the deployment of additional strategic assets?
Well, I think we're in a new situation when it comes to the U.S. security policy, not only in East and Northeast Asia, but around the world. If you take a look at what's happening in Iran, what happened in Venezuela, the United States threats and cajoling that was directed against Canada, the Greenland experience, the criticism of NATO allies, the effective abandonment of Ukraine by the United States, the absence of words like democracy and freedom from the U.S. national security strategy. And I could go on and list a lot more here, but it's pretty clear that the United States is on a very, very different course right now. And it's a course that does not prioritize, as we used to in the past, our allies and alliances. That's a very troubling thing to say, but I think it's the reality that we're facing right now. And America's NATO allies, I'm here in Europe and I'm talking to Europeans all the time. America's NATO and EU partners were very quick to realize this very early on in the second Trump term. And I think America's Asian allies have been a bit slower to pick up on this. But what is happening in Europe is that we're starting to develop strong partnerships that among and between European countries to deal with their security priorities. And I think the same sort of thing is going to be very, very important in Asia among America's allies, between cooperation between Japan and the Republic of Korea, Australia, working with Taiwan and other partnerships. This is going to be more important than ever before because we are in a very troubling new environment with respect to how America views its alliances and partnerships.
Right. So since we're really experiencing tremendous changes in the world, so we will have to closely see and monitor the partnerships in Asia as well. We'll have to leave our discussion right here tonight. Thank you so much for your insights, Mr. Revere.
Thank you.
And Professor Park, we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.